Okay, for week 16 Monday, I'm first going to talk about your last set of vocabulary for the semester, and then after that, I will talk about the in cold blood section that you guys took a quiz on last week, theoretically. So, vocabulary 5. So, first up, we have gregarious. Some of you folks are definitely gregarious people, outgoing, friendly, sociable, extroverted, all of those kinds of personality qualities. The second one, ubiquitous, describes something that is present everywhere. So I often think of technology, cell phones, as very ubiquitous things in our society nowadays. You can pretty much find those anywhere. The coronavirus has been rather ubiquitous in the United States as of late. As of this year, anyways. Anyways, something that's present everywhere. The third one, nefarious, describes someone who is evil. So we've talked a lot about evil and the nature of evil and the causes of evil, looking into In Cold Blood. Of course, there's the very classic, movie villains. They're much more black and white, evil, straightforward. So that can be a good example sometimes. The fourth one, you really could just pronounce using the first letter. So many other wonderful vowels after it, but it's just pronounced Q. And a queue is a line of people. So when I went to England, it was very common that instead of saying, form a line, they would say, please form a queue, line up in the queue, and queue starts here. And, I didn't know what that meant at the time. The fifth one, stoic, describes someone who shows no emotion. Doesn't mean they feel no emotion, but they do not display their happiness or their sadness or their anger or their trauma. They are very expressionless. The sixth one, abhor. So to abhor is to hate something. So something that you, to the very depths of your being, cannot stand. Maybe that is essays or spiders or broccoli or, whatever it is that you hate most in this world. The eighth one, replete, describes something that is filled. So this could be, literal filled, full, or it could be more metaphorical. Your face could be replete with happiness. So, some sort of non-physical filling. The ninth one, coy, describes someone who is shy, tentative, hesitant, quiet. Those would be good adjectives for a coy person. The 10th one, covert. You may have heard something referred to before as, the covert operations. So it means secret, classified, undercover. Those would all be good synonyms for covert. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over and talk about In Cold Blood. So getting into part 4, we get to see, we get to see the accommodations for our prisoners while they await trial. So Truman Capote became pretty good friends with Josephine Meyer, which assisted him in making contact with prisoners, as well as, getting a little bit more personal connection to the case. And that's one reason he's able to describe this area so well. So, the jail is laid out in an interesting fashion. Only 6 cells, so you can guess they don't get a whole lot of prisoners. And this description is at the top of 252. 5 cells are reserved for male prisoners, and the 6th is reserved for whatever female prisoner happens to be in there. So you can definitely guess they don't get a lot of female prisoners. The female cell is actually connected to the kitchen. So when Mrs. Myers is in the kitchen making food or whatever, then the individual in the female cell is there with her. So very strange kind of prison security there. Now this particular situation, Perry is actually staying in the ladies' cell because they want Perry and Dick to be separated. So that's important because thinking from kind of an author writing perspective, since Truman Capote had stronger ties to Josephine Meyer than to her husband, he was able to get some more conversation in with Perry than with Dick, which may have led to some of his very sympathetic portrayal of Perry. I mean, obviously, he definitely had conversations with Dick as well, but Perry was the first one he met, the first one that he probably bonded with, so you can kind of see how that might influence the way that he tells Perry's story. So anyways, we hear a little bit from Mrs. Meyer about Perry and his reaction to to the strangers who are waiting for them to arrive. And she is able to get through to him a little bit, have that conversation about Spanish rice. And she says, oh, well, I guess he's not the worst young man I ever saw. Of course, her husband is much more skeptical, having seen the crime scene, of course. Doesn't think that they are gentle or kind in any way, shape, or form. So that starts out prison internment. The next section, we get these kind of little diary entries from Perry and detailed descriptions of what happened on that particular day. So probably the most interesting one would be, the section with Dewey. When Dewey came to Perry and said, here's the statement that you made while we were in the vehicle, I just need you to sign it to verify it. Perry refused to sign. He said that there was a detail that was wrong and he wanted it changed. And of course, you can probably guess what that detail is. Perry wanted to admit that Dick had actually been telling the truth and that Perry was the one who shot and killed the whole family. So, interesting thing and interesting motivation. He says that he wants to change his story out of consideration for Dick's parents. So, it of course is notable that Perry does not really have any supportive family members. His sister wants nothing to do with him. His father is goodness knows where in Alaska. Dick has two parents who love him very much and are probably devastated to find out what he did. So Perry wants them to know that, Dick was there. He had a lot to do with the crimes. God, sorry, don't know why I'm yawning so much. But they would be able to at least have the comfort of knowing that Dick did not actually pull the trigger. Now, of course, Dewey comments that he wasn't certain that he believed Perry. And typically when we get to this section, class is sort of split between some people who are like, oh, okay, well, maybe Perry did do it, and others who are like, I don't know about that. And they think that maybe Perry is actually lying now when he wasn't lying before, that he's, letting his compassion for Dick's parents get the better of him and is actually telling a lie now. So, you can decide. Other notable things in this section, we have the recovery of the radio and the pair of binoculars. So Dewey and his detectives obviously want to make their case ironclad so that there's absolutely no way that Dick and Perry can get out of this. So they find the radio, they find the pair of binoculars from Mexico. They also get information about other bits of physical evidence. Yes. So the empty shells, leftover nylon cord, adhesive tape, and of course they recovered the knife and the gun from Dick's home. The shotgun that the investigators saw was indeed the shotgun that had been used to kill the family. So things are proceeding very well for the prosecution. One comment that Perry makes actually is that the rich never hang, only the poor and friendless. And this statement definitely has a ring of truth to it. If you look historically at the individuals who have been executed by the death penalty, you will find some discrepancies that do not reflect the general population. For one thing, people of color are more likely, proportionally speaking, given their percentage in the population, to end up on death row. Perry, being of Native American background and Irish background, of course, it's unclear exactly how he would be counted on that statistic. Also, poor people are far more likely, extremely more likely, to be executed via the death penalty. There are almost no cases where someone with wealth and power and position was executed by the death penalty. So poverty is a terrible, terrible thing if you are on trial. So anyways, we definitely see that, of course, in Dick and Perry's case. Neither of them is well off, and we know what happens. So, interesting thing to think about also is, prison sentence terms. One reason that the prosecutor is advocating for the death penalty is because of the amount of time that people typically serve for life imprisonment. So, on the one hand, you may say, well, death penalty, I don't know if I really feel good about that. I don't know if, it's right to execute people. Maybe life in prison is better, but life doesn't always mean, life. So life imprisonment in canvas can apparently be 15 years. So if given the option between imprisoning these men for 15 years and executing them, it's like, well, I really don't want them to get out of prison. That's kind of a complicated issue. If we could ensure that they would actually stay in there and that they would indeed die with prison, if we could ensure life without parole, well, yeah, that seems better in some ways, that middle ground. But 15 years? Ugh. So think about what Dick and Perry could do if they got out in 15 years. I mean, they're both in their late 20s, early 30s. They'd still have a pretty good amount of life ahead of them at that point, assuming they made it through. Okay, then we get some more commentary on the Walker case. So this this tells us about the polygraph examination, which I already mentioned. They passed the polygraph, and the murder of the Walker family remains unknown to this day, 2020. That case has not been solved. The DNA evidence was inconclusive, of course. So anyways, some more narration of Perry's time in jail. He does make a friend, though, his little squirrel. So that's very nice that Perry is befriending the animal kingdom. Dick is not quite occupied in the same way, but we'll get to that in a moment. The other thing from this section was the letter from Don Cullivan. So Don Cullivan, who really wasn't a close friend of Perry's, more an acquaintance from back in the day, writes to Perry to offer his compassion, to offer his memories of Perry, to appeal to his potential desire to confess and convert and see the light of God. So it does seem that for Don Cullivan, the religious messages are probably the primary reason that he's writing to Perry. But thinking on a practical level, Perry could definitely use someone like Don Cullivan, this adorable little conventional human, to help his case. When you are involved in a case of this degree, it can help to have character witnesses who can see something nice about you. Now, they're limited in kind of exactly what they can say, but Perry is probably hoping that, Don Cullivan might be able to assist him. And if nothing else, it's nice to have someone say something nice to him. He's probably not getting a lot of friendly visits these days, except maybe from Truman Capote, who we assume was visiting him quite a lot in this time. So this little bit here, while Perry's been making friends with squirrels and things, Dick has made plans. So while seeming very unconcerned about things and making jokes and being his normal charismatic sort of self, he has actually made a shiv that he intends to murder under Sheriff Meyer with. So he plans to escape, and he plans to do it without Perry. So he was already thinking about ditching Perry right before they were arrested, and he has decided that, done with him. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to look after myself. He can hang for all I care. So definitely some different attitudes there. Okay, so that concludes the first section of part 4, and we will continue